The sharp ringing of the phone pierced the stillness in our bedroom, cutting through the calm like a blade. That sound usually signified one of two things: a late-night work emergency for Maddie, or my mother calling to rant about her neighbor's troublesome cat. The digital clock on my nightstand blinked 1:17 a.m. I was halfway to sleep after a grueling day at the hospital. Maddie, however, was a light sleeper. Her hand shot out to grab the phone from the charger. "Hello," she mumbled groggily, her voice soft and hesitant. The kind of tone you use when you're not expecting someone to call at such an hour. "Yeah, it's me." "No, it's fine. Just a scheduling thing." "Okay. Yeah, tomorrow's fine." "All right, bye." Her voice was deliberately low as she ended the call and placed the phone back on the nightstand. She slid back under the covers, but something felt off. Normally, Maddie would snuggle close, her warmth offering comfort that lulled me to sleep. This time, however, she seemed stiff and distant. My drowsy mind, still trapped in the fog of exhaustion, picked up on a faint discord, like a wrong note in a familiar tune. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice a low rumble in the dark. "Oh, just a coworker," she replied quickly, her tone tight, with a strange edge of nervousness I couldn't quite place. "There was a scheduling issue for tomorrow," I grunted, letting the explanation slide for the moment. Maddie's colleagues at her advertising agency often called at odd hours. Tight deadlines were part of her job, but something about the way she spoke lingered, tugging at my subconscious. I tried to fall back asleep, but unease gnawed at me. Her words felt rehearsed, too smooth, like they'd been practiced. A strange discomfort settled in my gut, a feeling I'd never experienced before. It was as though the universe was trying to send me a signal, a frequency my tired mind couldn't yet decode. Morning arrived, sunlight filtering through the curtains. Maddie left for work, her usual peck on the cheek strangely hollow. The nagging feeling from the night before hadn't faded. It clung to me, persistent and heavy. Once she was gone, I reached for her phone. The last call wasn't from a saved contact. It was an unknown number. My heart started pounding, each beat loud and unsteady. Without thinking, I pressed redial. The phone rang twice before a man's voice answered, deep, smooth, and unfamiliar. "Hello." My throat tightened. Words stuck somewhere between my mind and my mouth. My heart raced as cold dread crept through me. I hung up without saying a word, my hand trembling as I placed the phone back on the nightstand. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. My world, once steady and secure, tilted violently off balance. It wasn't a coworker. Maddie, my Maddie, the woman I had loved and trusted for 8 long years, had lied to me. The realization crashed over me like a tidal wave, each surge stronger and more devastating than the last. A sickening sense of betrayal churned in my chest, my head spinning as my thoughts blurred in chaos. In the span of a single night, the foundation of everything I believed had cracked, leaving me adrift in a sea of doubt and heartbreak. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. This couldn't be happening, not to us. The rest of the day passed in a haze. At the hospital, the steady rhythm of work, the faces, the procedures, the endless tasks, they all blurred together. I felt like an outsider in my own life, a ghost merely going through the motions while a storm raged inside me. Every thought of Maddie, every memory we shared, was now tainted with suspicion, poisoned by the cold truth of her deception. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't, not until I had a plan, not until I was ready to look her in the eye and demand the truth. Instead, I moved through the day like a shadow, my body on autopilot as my mind crafted what I would do next. I wouldn't be the pitiful husband who simply crumbled under the weight of betrayal. No, I would orchestrate my own symphony of consequences, a masterpiece where she unknowingly played the leading role in her own downfall. That evening, Maddie walked through the door. Her smile was bright, yet as fake as a plastic doll's. "Hey, sweetheart, how was your day?" she asked, leaning in to plant a quick kiss on my cheek. The gesture, once reassuring, now felt like poison seeping under my skin. "It was fine," I replied flatly, my voice devoid of any affection. "How about you?" I sat on the couch, pretending to read a book. The pages were just a prop, masking the facade I was trying to maintain. Maddie began chatting about work, deadlines, brainstorming sessions, meetings, her words floating around me like meaningless static. My mind replayed the events of the morning. The man's voice on the phone, low, smooth, and unmistakably not the voice of just any coworker. It felt like I was watching a bad drama, where I played the oblivious husband and she, the villain, spinning her web of lies. "You know," I said casually, closing the book and setting it aside, "I noticed a missed call on your phone last night." Her hand froze mid-motion. The color drained from her face. "Funny thing," I continued, keeping my tone light, "I redialed a number this morning. Someone answered." Her eyes widened with panic, the mask of calm shattering instantly. She froze, her breathing shallow. The fear in her eyes was undeniable, and I felt an unexpected sense of satisfaction. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "The number, Maddie," I said, my voice steady and firm. "The one that called you at 1:17 a.m. You said it was a coworker. But when I called, a man answered. He said, 'Hello?' I leaned forward slightly, locking my gaze onto hers. 'Did you forget to tell him not to pick up when your husband calls?' Her breath hitched. She instinctively took a small step back, her hands fluttering helplessly at her sides like broken wings. The Maddie I thought I knew, the confident, loving partner, was now a stranger, cornered and desperate. The silence between us thickened, suffocating. Every second felt like an eternity as I watched her crumble under the weight of my words. For the first time, the tables had turned. I wasn't the fool anymore. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice trembling. Her denial was weak, a feeble attempt to escape the inevitable. The lies hung in the air like fragile spider webs, waiting to collapse under the truth. "Really?" I asked, leaning forward. My gaze cut through her defenses. "Are you sure about that?" The answer was clear in her face. The deceit was written in her wide, terrified eyes. It filled the room, a suffocating presence. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the quiet street below. With my back to her, I continued. I knew this would unsettle her further. "I'm not an idiot, Maddie," I began, my voice calm but sharp. "I work with trauma patients every day. Reading people, spotting their lies, it's second nature. And let me tell you, your performance tonight is pathetic." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Then, with finality, I delivered the blow. "You've been caught. You can stop pretending now." The silence that followed was deafening. Maddie stared at the floor, her body rigid. It wasn't the silence of innocence. It was the silence of guilt, of someone exposed and cornered. "I know you were out of town last week for a conference," I said, turning to face her. "What I don't understand is why you stayed at a cheap hotel with someone who wasn't your husband." She looked up at me, pale and trembling. The confident woman I had once loved was gone, replaced by a terrified, guilty child. It was a pitiful sight, but I couldn't deny the grim satisfaction that flooded me as I watched her world crumble. "Who is he, Maddie?" I asked coldly, my voice devoid of any emotion. She didn't answer. Instead, she collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Her tears didn't move me. They felt just as fake as the lies she'd been feeding me. "I don't know what to say," she whispered through her sobs. "Don't say anything," I interrupted, my voice steely. "I'm done with your lies. I'm done with you." I turned and walked to the bedroom, grabbing a bag and stuffing it with clothes. Staying under the same roof with her was unthinkable. I couldn't bear the sight of her. When I returned to the living room, She was still crying on the floor, her sobs trailing behind me as I headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she called out, panic in her voice. "Away from you," I replied, without turning back. "I've already called a lawyer. The process has begun." I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I simply closed it behind me and walked out of the house, out of my marriage. For the first time in a long time, I felt no regret. Yes, my life was about to change. Yes, it might be lonely at first, but one thing was clear. I would never again share my life with someone who had betrayed me so deeply. In the days that followed, I moved into a small apartment. The divorce was messy, but her desperate attempts to justify her actions were even messier. I let my lawyer handle everything, refusing to engage with her. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Maddie was gone from my life, permanently. I decided to start fresh in a new city, a place where no one knew my past. I took time to travel and rediscover myself. For the first time in months, I felt free. The world, once dark and suffocating, now seemed full of possibilities. One afternoon, as I sat in a cozy cafe with a book in hand, a familiar figure walked in. It was him, the man from the phone call that night. He was with Maddie. Our eyes met, and his face turned ashen. Maddie followed his gaze and froze when she saw me. Her mouth dropped open in disbelief, as if she were staring at a ghost. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Instead, I gave him a small, knowing smile and turned back to my book. They were trapped in their web of lies, bound together by the chains of their deceit. And me? I was finally free.